Hi, thanks for joining us. This is lesson number 9 in our Hebrews for our ladies class. This is Hebrews chapter 8. So in chapter 8, remember our little phrases that came from Rob Whitaker. I have changed this one, however, especially with the kids. I wanted something that they could understand a bit better, and also because I don't have access to his full sermon, I couldn't quite understand exactly where he was going with some of them. So this one got a change, and I've made it God's covenant gets an update. So it rhymes with 8. God's covenant gets an update. So in chapter 7, recall that the writer of Hebrews had just made the point that if the law wasn't changed, then Jesus was breaking the law by assuming the role, or God appointing him as high priest. Okay, so in the previous chapter, it was referred to as the law, but in this chapter, the word used is covenant, and it's referring to the same thing. Law and covenant essentially are the same thing. The old law given on Mount Sinai was God's previous covenant or agreement with man. Now, as we saw in chapter 7, it was necessary that the law change, so God brought a new covenant or a new law. We see more of this explained in chapter 8. In verse 1, the writer says, "This is the point that we are making, that we have this wonderful high priest who is better than any other, so we want there to be a change. We want to give up the old for the new. We want something better." He again lists Jesus' attributes as high priest. Number 1, he is seated at the right hand of the throne of majesty. Number 2, he is in the heavens, which it says he's at the right hand of the throne of majesty in the heavens. And number 3, he is a minister of the sanctuary and the true tabernacle built by God, not by human hands. So that's a better tabernacle. Number 4, he has something to offer just as every high priest on earth could offer gifts and sacrifices. However, if Jesus were still on earth, he couldn't be high priest, is what this writer is saying in Hebrews. The priests here serve only a copy or shadow of the heavenly things. The tabernacle in which Jesus serves is much better than the physical one here. They had to closely follow God's instructions to make the earthly tabernacle here. I love verse 6. I'm just going to read it. "But now he has obtained a more excellent ministry, inasmuch as he is also the mediator of a better covenant, which was established on better promises." There's our word better there 2 times. The word better covenant indicates a new one, and the old one is obsolete. I talked with the kids in the kids class that we all understand when we get an update to an app or program, we know it's supposed to be better than before, and the old one goes away, we can't even use it. The same is true with God's covenant. Oh, we could still use it, but it wouldn't be effective. It would be all in vain. It would be pointless. And why would we want to? And that is exactly the point the Hebrew writer is trying to make. If you have something better, why would you want to go back to an inferior system? It must be said, however, that God doesn't make laws that aren't important or perfect. David calls God's law perfect. Psalm 19, verse 7. And it was. It was designed to be temporary, however. It was designed to show us that we could never do it on our own, that there was nothing on earth that could save us. It was designed to show us to depend on God and God alone. Recall that the law was established in a way that made him king. He wanted to rule over the people and that they would depend on him for protection. Instead, they looked around them at the other kingdoms and they wanted a king just like them. They begged for a man to rule them. And we saw that how that led them to have the kingdom taken away from them. I mean, there were only 3 kings there in the beginning before the kingdom was divided and taken away. And the only reason why it was delayed was because God's promised, part of God's promise to David. God's new covenant places Jesus by the authority of the Father at the head. He rules us. But I digress from chapter 8. The writer says the fault was really with the law that he wasn't really with the law that he made. Verse 8 says the fault was with them. They couldn't keep it. The people couldn't keep it. They couldn't look to him as king because of all this, and that it was designed to be temporary. God said back in the Old Testament that something new was coming. Through the prophet Jeremiah, he predicted that he would send a new covenant. This is from Jeremiah 31, verses 31 through 34, and it's quoted in verses 8 through 12 of our chapter. Notice the phrase in verse 10, they shall be my people. He again wants to be king over his people. The closing words to this chapter reiterate that this is a better covenant in that he says a new covenant. He has made the first obsolete. Now what is being obsolete and growing old is ready to vanish away. He has the old TVs, remember the old tube TVs? Well, they've pretty much been obsolete. I don't think you can buy one anymore. And why would you want to? The flat screens take up less room. They're so much better quality. So the old ones are obsolete and they have gone away. It took some time, but now they've pretty much vanished away. And the same is true with the old law. It's pretty much vanished away because we have something better. Okay? We want that something better, don't we? All right, let's review our key words or phrases. Chapter 1, no one better than the Son, better person. Chapter 2, don't neglect what you knew, better knowledge. Chapter 3, faithfulness is the key, better than Moses. Chapter 4, the rest that he swore, better rest. Chapter 5, our priest is forever alive, better priesthood. Chapter 6, it might be impossible to fix, better hope. Chapter 7, priest of God in heaven, better priest. Chapter 8, God's covenant gets an update, better covenant. Now, if I've taken any from Rob Whitaker, they will be in quotes, but any of my own, I have started just leaving off the quotes so you can tell which ones are his and which ones are mine. I want to remind you, if you'll hit subscribe, you'll tap on the bell, and then also, I think you further have to tell it to notify you when we add new videos. So if you'll subscribe to Blue Ridge Church of Christ and then tell it to notify you when we post new videos, then you'll always get it and you won't miss it. All right, thanks for joining me. See you next week.